So welcome everybody. For those here for the first time, I'm VeeDotMe. We're doing not gaming, we're talking. And what we're talking about is Dead Cells tier list content. It's been a while since I've done a tier list. Tier lists used to be the things that we did on not really a regular basis, but the last time we did a ranged tier list was 6 months ago. So it's been, you know, a little while. A lot has changed since then, and that might influence this. There's also things in the backpack. We do already have a backpack tier list, but it might be like an instant sell might not be an instant sell because it might be worth it to use the backpack version of that. As we're going through this, we're thinking about all the changes. We're thinking about the use cases. Just to let you all know how I kind of measure this out. Looking at the melee tier list, the way how I decide on what goes where, it's not really about fun factor, even though that does play just a little bit. It's not really about if the item works by itself, because there's some items that only work with another item. And it's not also about starter fixes. So things like Sata Stiletto, if you can get poison on hit, is giga busted. We don't think about that. We only think about Sata Stiletto with things that you can get easily. A lot of the items in the tier lists are assuming that you are playing 4 BC and higher, assuming you have access to specific mutations, and assuming that you have probably all weapons unlocked. This is a tier list from my perspective. If you happen to not agree with certain items, definitely let me know. If this is in YouTube, let me know in the comments of the YouTube video. If it's Twitch chat, let me know in Twitch chat if you like what you see, or if you have some outside info that I may not be thinking about. The way how we're gonna do this, we're gonna go top to bottom, starting from beginner's bow, which is an easy meme, all the way down to barrel launcher, but then I also want to do Ferryman's lantern on this as well. The rankings, S being an instant pick, that means if we see it, chances are we take it, because regardless of the build I currently have, this is probably gonna make for a really good build either now or later. A, usually the pick, that's something that you can probably take it in the beginning of the game, probably wins the game by itself. Maybe the builds aren't, super busted, but it actually does a heck of a job in the scenarios that you want to use it. B might be the pick. That's something that is good enough to win the game. Maybe not that good without like a full build behind it. And even after that, it's still probably not as good as an S rank build. C for situational. These are things that we kind of just play for fun. If you get all the pieces together, the pieces to Exodia, you might win the game. But even then, it's like a lot of work that you probably didn't have to do if you just use something else. And that's things that are easily B rank or higher. D is a placeholder. D is for items that you got in your recycling tubes. You used it in prison quarters, and as soon as you see really anything else, you probably ditch it. Then we have F, which is the instant sell. Those are things that are borderline. You don't want to see them ever, and if you do, you just sell it. Because if you use it, chances are you might get hit. Playing 4 BC plus, getting hit might be a problem. Don't even waste the potential health pot for actually using it. And then finally, we have a meme tier in here. Meme because it's an item that I also just realized I put tactics tier list. This is not a tactics tier list. This is a ranged tier list. All right, first item on the list. Multi-knock, previously a D tier. D because this one's tough. Marksman bow, I actually consider this to be like the shovel of ranged items. It's an item that doesn't really need other items. An item that doesn't really activate other items. It does work on its own, and they did slightly buff it because they made it tactics only. It's actually used to be green and purple, but what they did was they made it purple only and gave it more ammo. 24 ammo, so you get 8 shots off before it goes away. And what's really good, when you think about the enemies in the game, you think about things like Rampagers, Oven Knights, failed experiment. You want to be able to kill them without having to do the dodge roll for a lot of the ranged weapons. And Marksman bow does that. You do have to kind of like build up the power of it because it doesn't crit. If you don't actually get like a stronger marksman bow later, say prison depths, you're probably gonna have like some damage issues. I would like to give marksman bow a little bit of an upgrade, but I'm not quite ready to have it even higher up because when it comes to tactics, I'm thinking about meltation. Yeah, I've been saying marksman the whole time. Triple knock. I want to melt stuff. I want to go into the second boss, hold square, and just delete the monster. Next on the list, bow and endless quiver. Historically in F, in 4 BC, it has a 3-hit combo. Really in every BC, but in 4 BC specifically, a 3-hit combo on a bow is not very good. Take slashers, for example. Slashers, say they teleport on you, they go for the slash, you roll backwards, hit, now it's gonna do like the actual wave attack. Either you're gonna lose the 3rd hit of the combo, or you're gonna have to walk forward, dash through to the other side, and then do the 3rd hit. And by then, demons might be flying in, Rampager might be flying across the screen, bats might be flying at you. So I don't think that there's not a place for a 3-hit combo in Dead Cells. I just think a bow that does 0 damage, 10 damage, compared to something that does like 50 damage per shot is good. Yeah, if you look at this, the critical DPS on bow and endless quiver is actually less than a regular multi-knock bow shot. The endless ammo is cool, but there's more ways to get ammo back now in version 2.1 than there ever has been. Next is marksman bow, C tier. I am actually not the biggest fan of marksman bow. I do try to, give it a try every now and then, but for the most part, I don't really use this thing. But what marksman bow does well is just fish for enemies. So you're shooting down a hallway, trying to destroy everything, and then if you do, great. If you don't, then you have to have like something for when they teleport on top of you, or else you might have a problem. I like the concept of the bow. I think there's a niche out there for people who want to use like 2 weapons, or marksman bow plus thunder shield, because the thunder shield does damage and is half tactics. You could also pair this with close range skills like wave of denial, but once you get to a boss, the wave of denial doesn't really do anything. So I agree that there are a lot of use cases for it. It's just as a situational item, I could use other builds and not have to go through that kind of gameplay, which I feel is like a better way to go about it. I do see some builds in the chat. People are talking about Spartan sandals with it, but again, we have Spartan sandals on the A tier because I could just kill everything with Spartan sandals. I don't actually need to shoot anything with it. There's even bosses that Spartan sandals kills by itself. I would prefer to just kick. I've seen people talk about marksman bow with the Javelin, and in that scenario, I feel like Javelin could probably kill everything by itself. You throw it, teleport onto the enemies, dodge roll backwards, throw it again, rinse, repeat. I don't really need to press the marksman bow button. Next, Sonic Carbine, F rank item. We have it in the F tier because to me personally, the Sonic Carbine is the same thing as War Spear. It is a ranged War Spear that actually does pretty good damage on some maps. Some maps have things like rats, mushroom boys, oven knights that don't really move very quickly, and when you lay down like the suppressive fire, it's gonna kill stuff. Unfortunately, for those who don't know, Sonic Carbine actually has ammo to it, and surprisingly, 20 ammo on a boss with a weapon that does basically 0 damage, you go through that ammo very quickly. As I said, there are ways to get your ammo back now, which is better than how we had in the past. But I really don't want to use Sonic Carbine by the time I get to a boss. Like, that's bad. So unfortunately, we're gonna keep it as an F. I could see where you would put it as a D. Like, you go into corrupted prison, where the birds and the sludges are, and crabs, and this might be able to kill that stuff. But then you're going to you're going to Conjunctivius. And imagine using this on Conjunctivius. That's gotta be god-awful. Infantry bow actually got a buff, I think. It's something that I historically don't use very often. It's actually almost the same power as Multi-knock. It only has 8 ammo, however, so you do need an actual plan to get your ammo back. So what you do there's grenades that give you ammo back. There are powers that give you your ammo back. And for those who don't know, parries actually give your arrows back also. But to be honest, I'd rather use infantry over marksman bow if I have a chance. If you think about use cases, it's probably more useful over the course of the game than a marksman bow. Quick bow, I actually knocked down to the A tier. Nerfed quick bow, reduced the critical damage. So quick bow was an item that really like fits everything's bill, where you don't actually have to do the gameplay of any of the other bows because you could just hold square. Marksman bow, not necessary, because you could just hold square into a hallway and any monster coming up the hallway just melts. Infantry bow doesn't matter, because once you load in the couple of hits and then you dodge roll, the next hits are gonna kill the enemy. But why we knocked it down from the S tier is because some of the items in the S tier are actually like better, in my opinion. Like, it just longevity of the game, win rate wise, I find it to be probably better than running a quick bow, at least for me. So I'm gonna keep this as an A. I don't think I'm ready to bump it up. Moving on, ice bow. Ice bow, previously a C tier, because you don't really build a build out of ice bow except protect the owl. This is the only time where I feel like ice bow does an actual job. There are other builds. You could say magic missile. Maybe you shoot the ice bow, the monster's slowed, you do magic missile nonsense, and the monster's dead. Quick bow, even, you load up one bullet, unload with the quick bow. Maybe that's a thing. But I feel like I could just use the quick bow and not ever have to actually use the ice bow. You do like a Javelin ice bow build where you have double turrets for the bosses. You use the ice bow to prevent enemies from attacking you while you throw the Javelin. But then again, you could probably just use the Javelin, and once you go in, you might be on top of multiple monsters. Sometimes you can get the ice bow to freeze multiple monsters if they're on each other. It happens. If you have the Pierce, that's even better. But Frost Blast does that a little better. Now, they did change a lot of the ice weapons to be green-purple, so you do have the opportunity to use ice bow with the Nutcracker. What I do like to do is I like to instantly talk about Frost Blast, because a lot of people might look at ice bow and think, well, if ice bow is a C, surely ice blast is a C, right? On version 2.0, we got the Malaise update, and Malaise update included the backpack. And I actually think the backpack alone makes Frost Blast even better than Ice Bow. Frost Blast does everything that the Ice Bow does except protect the owl. It works, but you don't really want to be that close. But Nutcracker, Broadsword, Flint, even like Valmont Whip while you're purple, like all of that works the same way with Ice Bow as it does with Frost Blast, except you hit more things with Frost Blast. And when you're playing with the backpack and the Acrobatic pack, you can just put this in your backpack and you get this massive freeze on your quick bow bullet, which is something that, like, if you think about quick bow, like, you don't want these monsters on top of you. That's how you do it. Yeah, you could do Ice Bow, but why bother? Let me just put this in the backpack, and it's infinitely better than Ice Bow is gonna be. Now, this isn't a backpack tier list, but there are some things in here that I think are much better when you think about the item itself and the capability in the backpack. All right, next on the list, Heavy Crossbow, the Shoddy. Previously, this used to be a triple S, and then a couple patches happened, and we knocked it down to an A. And that A, in all honesty, was a little generous on the last patch. So they buffed it again. The damage on bosses was really bad in one of the previous patches. And they reverted that change just a little bit. And now the damage should be better. Conjunctivius, perfect example. Heavy Crossbow has a couple things. It never runs out of ammo because you can always reload it. And right now, I'm just paying attention up here. I'm looking to see damage. That's a chunkster. Non-critical does a lot less. So it's like a ×2 modifier on crit. Which means if you crit faster than you can attack twice, it's better. I think it's better than Ice Crossbow on bosses, 100%. But I don't think it's like S tier. Even with the damage I just saw, there's gameplay required there. Like, you have to actually do triangle square, and you don't always think about doing that. So we like to use Susie as an example. Susie is the theoretical Dead Cells player out there. She has wins. She doesn't have 1,000 hours in the game, but she's not a fresh install. She knows how to play the game. She knows builds, she knows how to do synergy, knows how to do stats, all of that stuff. But Susie still asks us, hey, do I take this Heavy Crossbow that just dropped? I would ask, okay, what skills do you have? What mutations do you have? How much money do you have? What does the Heavy Crossbow actually do? And if all that stuff lines up, I think it's actually A-worthy. And it's not really hard to make all of that line up. And even if you don't get the Wolf Trap, there's tons of things that you could use, both purple and green, that allow you to do the reload and shoot. Repeater Crossbow, previously an A tier. Repeater Crossbow did technically get buffed in multiple ways. Changing it to purple is actually huge because you have access to support mutation, and you have access to Tranquility. Tranquility allows you to get bonus damage based off of range. And then they also buffed it with the introduction of Acrobatic Pack. With Acrobatic Pack, you can use something like the Boy Axe. Turns into these easy crits that you don't actually have to land the triangle button. And the Boy Axe doesn't actually rip out either. All you have to do is press square, the Boy Axe flies out, and you get crits for it. My heart is telling me this is probably an S tier item. Now, the only time that Repeater Crossbow is somewhat bad is against Hand of the King. Like, out of all the bosses in the game, Hand of the King is very good against Repeater Crossbow. They reworked Heart of Ice, that's true. So Heart of Ice used to be for melee only. You get cooldown reduction for enemies that are snared, but now they made it close range combat. So where you have to be like within an X range and you get cooldown reduction off rooted targets. No matter if it's a ranged weapon or a melee weapon. Is it better purple or green? I think it doesn't matter. That's why it's an S rank, to me at least. So as green, you use Acrobatic Pack still, because you don't need damage from Acrobatic Pack, you just want the actual snare. Put this in your backpack, and then you're rocking Wolf Trap and Crusher. If you don't have Acrobatic Pack, you don't need this in the backpack because this has its own built-in snare, to which you could use Wolf Trap, Root Grenade, or Ice Bow to really set up your snares and be able to actually land the crits. If you're playing tactics, and like damage-wise, you could do something like Gastro, where you destroy food to get stronger, or Heart of Ice, so you can spam your Giant Whistle with a lower cooldown on your Root Grenade or your Wolf Trap. If you're playing tactics, you have a turret, plus whatever you want, Acrobatic Pack with Boy Axe, You throw in support mutation and tranquility, incredible damage on every boss except sometimes hammocking. And if that involves like getting these puzzle pieces together that all fit very nicely. It's like the meme on Twitter, the game developer meme, where there's like a children's puzzle where you put the pegs in the hole, but there's like one square hole that every peg fits into. That's this weapon. Every peg fits with repeater crossbow. After that, we have the other reworked crossbow, and that's the ice crossbow. Ice crossbow, previously a B tier. This one's tough. It's basically the opposite of Giant Killer. It mows down everything in biomes, and then it does nothing in bosses. And you think to yourself that maybe the way you're supposed to play it is you're supposed to use the backpack. So on the boss, I might have the iron staff. So perhaps I put the iron staff in the backpack, I go into the boss fight, I drop my crossbow, and then use this. But then it's like, maybe I should just use this in the biome, but the reason is you get kind of a free biome clear with the ice crossbow. But there's a lot of things in tactics that give you relatively free biome clears that still work on bosses. This doesn't for a lot of bosses. So I'm thinking maybe we drop it down to a C tier. And I think situational is almost a perfect descriptor for ice crossbow, where it does super well in biomes and does super awful on bosses. Next on the list, explosive crossbow. Previously a D tier. Now this was one that was a little controversial, not gonna lie. I didn't have a lot of time with the heavy crossbow, and because of that, thinking about it from like a shovel standpoint, where it doesn't do anything for my other items, that's not entirely true, because when you have Instinct of the Master of Arms, you get cooldown reduction on your giant whistle if you're playing survival. If you're playing tactics, you can run something like Knife Dance, so that when you're done shooting and you got your full cooldown reduction, you go in, you do the Knife Dance, and then you start whacking the enemy with the melee. The boss, we're talking about like Timekeeper, Giant, stuff like that. And then when it's time to run away, you can shoot while you're kiting backwards. I'm pretty sure it's better than Marksman bow, and it's AoE, so you can kill stuff like bats. Bats are coming from overhead. You can do triangle to hit the floor, kills them or knocks them away. Some elites, you just go and spam triangle. Imagine trying to spam Marksman bow on an elite hammer. The hammers that do the bombs and then spawn bats and stuff like that. You can't do that with Marksman bow. So explosive, to me at least, is a better Marksman bow. Is it A-worthy? When you're tactics, would you take quick bow over explosive? If you're survival, I mean, I'm already higher than the other survival things, so I guess it's just these two that go hand in hand. I think I would want to keep it as an A. And that's a pretty big upgrade over D, but only because my thought process that this is just a shovel is incorrect. Because the fact that you can use cooldown reduction mutations with it, I think it's actually a lot stronger than shovel is. Alchemic Carbine. This is one of chat's favorite weapons. Usually stands the test of time and maintains its spot in the S tier. And it was actually really funny because I was thinking to myself that Carbine cannot kill Oven Knights. So then we hopped into the game, I shot an Oven Knight, and it actually died to just the Carbine. That's the electricity. Okay, here we go. One bullet, by the way. And for those who don't know, they actually buffed poison in general. Poison, if you can look up here, there's a poison cloud. I didn't actually shoot up there. What happened is that when a monster gets enough stacks... Why is this unmuting? When it dies, it actually leaves a poison cloud. So if you think about Prison Depths, where you have like the hammer and they spawn bats, and the hammer itself is doing stuff, if you shoot at all, and the bats get poisoned, they are probably gonna leave a cloud, and eventually that hammer will die even if you're not directly shooting it, which I think is really cool gameplay. But besides that, there's really good builds with Carbine. Hokuto bow plus Carbine was the classic, you know, grandma's tactics, everyone used that. And then they made a backpack. And now all of a sudden, Carbine in the backpack, or Carbine primary with something else in your backpack, it's actually really, really good. It's an enabler of all your poison affixes. It leaves poison clouds for small stuff, bats, rats, Shantae, all those things that die to poison with low HP. So it just does a lot of things right now. I could even imagine it getting nerfed at some point, but only because poison cloud is really good. I think I do not mind it as an S at all. And that brings us to the next item, which is the Boomerang. Used to be a S tier weapon a long time ago. That was back when we could use 2 boomerangs. So they nerfed it. They made it green-purple, where the idea was, as a survival weapon, it's kind of slow. So you're just throwing it at a target and waiting for it to die. That doesn't really work anymore because now they made it purple only. So when you think about that, you try to decide, when do I ever use Boomerang? Do I use it with Protect the Owl, where I shoot with the ice bow, throw the Boomerang, and I just wait for everything else to kill stuff? Probably not, because like I could have just shot it with Marksman bow in that case. Do I use it with Wolf Trap, where I throw down the Wolf Trap, roll backwards, throw the Boomerang, and now we get giga damage. We grind it up. And I feel like, no, not even there is where I would use it. I think the only time I'm using it, well, maybe 2 times. One is dual bound with kunai, but maybe that's because the kunai is that good. You could dual bind it with ice shards, where you have like a oily boomerang. The only issue with that is you have to be close to the target because ice shards is a close range item compared to kunai, which is long range. And then finally there's the backpack. You can put a boomerang in it. It does fire a real boomerang that grinds up enemies for reduced damage, applies oil, might apply poison on hit, something like that. And it's okay. We've tried a couple times. I feel like I overestimated it, but I think you use this over Bow and Endless Quiver. Because like, at least, and they actually buffed it on the giant. There was a time where the boomerang didn't hit the eyeball unless you jump through hoops to do it. But now the boomerang will successfully hit the giant's eyeball and looks much better than it used to. Chat saying it's nerfs because it didn't get buffs to compensate. I could see that. It's a very good way to put it, absolutely. Hemorrhage, previously an A tier. Hemorrhage got changed, which is no longer green, it is now red-purple. And that is a nerf to survival, because survival Hemorrhage was huge. Hemorrhage is like a ranged broadsword. Having a ranged broadsword while survival was like massive. And if you get hit, it doesn't matter because you're playing survival anyway. Tactics only does really well because you have the option for tranquility, you have the option for turrets. When you're playing the brutality version of Hemorrhage, what you actually get out of that is the ability to run Instincto, cooldown reduction, with really, really good skills. In my opinion, brutality skills are some of the best in the game. Like Fire Grenade, Flamethrower, Knife Dance, which is purple-red. You probably wouldn't do it with Corrupted Power, but you could if you want. It is kind of low on ammo, so you do want to use some kind of grenade that gets you your ammo back. Like, I would take Hemorrhage over infantry bow all day, because it does the same things that the bow does. It applies dots, which activates my other skill affixes. The only thing is you need a way to get your ammo back. And sometimes I just use ammo mutation, because having more axes is really, really good to me compared to having ammo with this thing. I'd rather find another way to get my ammo back. And another thing that chat just mentioned, the backpack. Using Hemorrhage primary with Carbine in the backpack, really good. Throwing knife in the backpack with Hemorrhage, pretty good stuff. But most of the time, I just launch axes. I don't even think about the backpack when I use this. Let's keep it going. Boy axe, previously a B tier. At one point, I used to just do B for boy no matter what, because like that was kind of good. How we not do B for boy? Maybe A stands for boy. Green boy axe is actually amazing because we have Heart of Ice. Purple boy axe is actually amazing because it's a mobile snare. And a lot of tactics weapons would really like to have a snare. It's better than Ice Bow, I can say that much. For Heart of Ice, it's probably better than Frost Blast. And you can dual bind it with a few things, and it works in the backpack. The backpack by itself is basically a buff. And I know this isn't like a backpack tier list, but we have to consider the idea that you're making a full build that will actually get you through the end of the game. And stuff like the boy axe, I think, is that weapon. We have had some circumstances where like we dual bound it and it feel kind of weird. Things like barrel launcher sometimes felt weird. But when it works, you can tell that the boy axe was actually massive in that whole time. War Javelin, previously an A. Oh, they nerfed it! Crap! We used to use this as survival and now you can't. Technically, I do still use this as survival every now and then. With Nutcracker, it doesn't really do as well as it used to now that this is not green. So the tactics version, it does still work because Javelin's a massive weapon. I do see people talking in chat about speed running. I try not to think about the speed run for this specific item too much. We do think about Assault Shield, because Assault Shield's really good to move around the map. It pushes enemies, allows you to do stuff like War Spear for crits. But I don't like to mention the speedrun aspect of the Javelin because I feel as though it's not really... Again, let's use Susie for example. I meet Susie at Target. She has a War Javelin. She's like, V, you said this was an A rank item. I'm going into the Giant. What do I do? Am I really gonna tell Susie to go up the wall, throw it over the Giant, teleport to the other side and just walk out? No, I'm not. I'm gonna tell her to play the game. So in that circumstance, I think while it is very good, and in the backpack, you're able to get like a free knockback, or it might straight up kill the monster because it knocked them off a platform. I don't think Javelin's in the top 3 build. I think Boy Axe could find its way in top 3. But even with a backpack Javelin, let's say like Marksman bow plus backpack Javelin, while that's really fun, I don't think that beats Hand the King. And I'm pretty sure that doesn't beat the Giant. So I'm actually gonna downgrade it because it did get nerfed, because I think the survival version is actually amazing because you teleport in and then you get free crits with Nutcracker. So I might get a little bit of hate mail for that one. That's okay. We don't mind the hate mail. Moving on, Hokuto's bow. Another weapon that stood the test of time. It did get nerfed. It is now a tactics only weapon. So you can no longer use it as brutality. And you know what? That's fine. They had to nerf it somehow. Using it as brutality allowed you to have bleed weapons like the kunai or blood sword that does bleed propagation. And when the first monster dies to the bleed, the next monster gets the Hokuto proc and the bleeding, and it just dominoes throughout the biome, like assuming something is in range. So that's gone. Now we just have Hokuto's bow working with bleeding, lightning, poison. So I think even despite all of that, it's still S quality. It's overrated. So one really good example was when we were doing the lightning rod. We were testing lightning rod, trying to see how to get this thing to really pop off. And the way we did that is we put one lightning rod at the bottom of the map. You go to the top of the map, you put the next lightning rod. They both activate, hopefully kills everything. Sometimes it doesn't kill everything. And we were trying to figure out what do you do if it doesn't kill. We decided, let's use Hokuto's bow. We're gonna put the Hokuto on the first enemy, drop the lightning rod, go to the top, place the next one, the first monster dies, activates the mark, goes all the way up the lightning rod, and any monster that has the shock on it is gonna die to Hokuto. Yeah, you could say I could just have shot everything, but Hokuto has gameplay to it that changes how you play the game. And I think that's S quality, as well as the old-fashioned builds, like using these together, or using this with the kunai. So next on the list, Nerves of Steel. Previously a B tier. Nerves of Steel did get a slight buff when they made it tactics only. I think they gave it an ammo bump. So now this thing has 8 shots. It's not terrible. 267. More damage than Infantry Bow. It's just Infantry Bow has like cool builds behind it, and Nerves of Steel doesn't. Nerves of Steel is almost like Marksman Bow. It's just a shot. It does do a crit though. So technically with the crit, you would assume that it is better than Marksman Bow. I'm not quite ready to move it down to C though. I feel like when it comes to actual gameplay, when it comes to the other items in the C tier, I'd rather use Nerves of Steel over all of it. But I would rather use Quick Bow over Nerves of Steel, because Quick Bow is just like an easier item for me to use. I'd rather use Heavy Crossbow over Nerves of Steel, because Heavy Crossbow prevents counterplay from the enemies, and it actually does damage to bosses. I'm not saying that Nerves of Steel doesn't, it definitely does. But I think the stuff in the A tier, I think does better for me personally. But I know it's not a C. I know it's very much possible to get through the entire game using Nerves of Steel. So I'm gonna keep it as a B. There are a lot of cool tactics skills to really like make use of that crit. Specifically, Lacerating Aura and Knife Dance. Because you can use this in melee range, it's really cool to be able to get those melee stuff off without having to do like weird gameplay between this and this. All right, next on the list, Throwing Knife. Throwing Knife, I gotta say, probably one of my favorite items in the game. It's a really weird item because when you think about it, the single shot doesn't really do anything. But what you do get is you get a 22 DPS bleed, which also activates everything else that you have. So you're talking about turrets that deal bonus damage to bleeding, talking about Owl that does bonus damage to bleeding. When I do cell farming, I farm cells with double kunai. And I feel like that is the easiest way to play the game. Of course, you can't use double kunai anymore without being in custom mode. So the way how you typically run a kunai is dual bound with some of the throwing items. So dual bound with Ice Shards, dual bound with Firebrand, dual bound with Boomerang. You could also dual bind it with melee weapons. So we had the kunai with Snake Fangs. We've had kunai with Blood Sword. I used kunai with the Samurai Sword before, the Hattori's Katana. And I felt like that was really good. So I think the Throwing Knife, while like, think about it in a vacuum, doesn't really do a really good job showing it at its best. And the tier list isn't about the weapon in a vacuum. It's more so about win rate when I take the item and I start thinking about how I'm gonna use this thing. So easy S for me. If you all need to see like how do you use the kunai, I implore you, just equip it and experiment. Throw it at some enemies, dual bind it with some of your weapons, throw it in your backpack. Use it in red, use it in purple. Doesn't really matter. It does its job no matter what you do with it. Which not every weapon does that, just to say that. Electric Whip, previously an S. Wait, maybe it's not that tough. Yo, let's go. VeeDotMe 6 months ago already knew where to put the electric whip. Now, what's unfortunate is that I do get a lot of questions asking me, like, why do I like the electric whip so much? Because whenever, like, someone in chat uses it, they struggle. The way how I use it is I usually pair it with double turrets. Or you could pair it with the owl. The idea is you will kill everything in the biomes with just the whip. If you feel unsafe, maybe you could take wave denial plus a turret. But you kind of want the turret because having support mutation with the shock dot is actually really good, because you'll get that bonus damage on everything you do from support, and having that on the shock dot is incredibly strong. There's a lot of enemies that have shields, Evanite being one of them, and the electric whip goes through that. Electric whip also hurts mushroom boys. We fight Hand the King sometimes. Hand the King does the combo, you know, overhead, around the back, spin, all of that stuff. You just double jump and then spam square. It's like really good. Technically it's AoE because the lightning dot hits other enemies, and it's very fast, and it gives you hang time. So it's like a jack of all trades. Next on the list, Firebrand. Firebrand, previously a B tier. I put it as a B tier from the idea that for throwing builds, it's actually useful in every throwing build. You also can pair it with dual binding weapons. So Oil Sword is the premier example of that. Throw it, slash. That's the whole game. You don't have to do anything else. Dual bound, by the way. The only issue about bonus damage to fire is that brutality builds already have access to that with the best fire skills in the game, which is fire grenade and flamethrower. So in that circumstance, like, I often only take this if I have Oil Sword. I don't think it's so bad that I would put it in the D tier as a placeholder, because at least, like, it does stuff for the rest of my build. It's just that the Boomerang itself doesn't really do anything for the rest of my build. Pyro, previously definitely not an S, previously a D tier. Firebrand has a 4-hit combo where the 4th hit, or is it 3 hit? Someone in chat confirm that for me, if it's a 3-hit or 4-hit combo. The final hit of the combo locks you out of dodge rolling. So the dodge roll can become a death, but could also not do the full combo. You could do 2 hits and then dodge, and then you're fine. But for some reason, I just don't do that, and I don't know why I choose to do the 3-hit combo whenever it happens. I should say that Pyro has multiple ways to get oil, especially now that we have the backpack. Now it's a red-purple item. Red Pyro gives you access to everything red that does oil. And there's basically one thing that I am thinking about, and that's Oil Sword in the backpack using Porcupack. And in all honesty, like, that's not all that great. It's good for bosses because it gives you access to stuff like, as you're playing Brutality, it gives you access to Corrupted Power, Corrosive Cloud, Knife Dance. On a boss, you only need to apply the oil the one time with the dodge roll, and you'll be able to crit after that. The oil lasts a decent amount of time. It doesn't last forever, but I think it's good enough that you can actually get like a somewhat viable build out of it as playing red-purple. I kind of want to put it in the C tier because it, like, the builds work. They can take you to the end of the game. But I think win rate wise, I could probably build some higher tier stuff up here at the top. All right, next on the list, next item, Lightning Bolt. Previously a D tier. So I actually don't like Lightning Bolt as tactics. I was only using Lightning Bolts while green. And whenever we get a green Lightning Bolt, I use it. I think it's fantastic. But I don't care for the purple one. And that's not to say that it's bad. I've seen people beat the game with it. I've seen people rank Lightning Rod as an S rank item. And that's probably fine. But when it comes to me, like, would I rather use a quick bow over Lightning Bolt? Probably. Would I rather use explosive crossbow over lightning bolt? Probably. The shock dot is pretty good, but if I wanted a shock source, I'd rather use electric whip. And maybe that's unfair because electric whip is an S rank item on this tier list. So maybe it's bad to call lightning bolt a D because electric whip exists. But even if I don't have a shot source, like we could maybe bring in Tesla, could bring in magnetic grenade. There's a lot of stuff we could bring in that I feel like is all much more useful. So we'll leave it as a D. I might get some hate mail for that one. That's fine, whatever. Moving on. Fire Blast. Fire Blast, previously an A. I actually used to value Fire Blast over Pyro. It has not been changed almost at all. And the reason why I liked it so highly was because we had stuff like rats, we had stuff like oven knights. All of those items, I mean, all those monsters die to Fire Blast. But birds, imagine trying to kill a bird, the blue ones, the slammers, with this thing. Like, that's bad. So I am gonna deduct a point only because, like, mentally I know it struggles against certain enemies, but I think when it comes to using it, I would rather use it over the pyro. The lockout on dodge rolling is a lot better on Fire Blast. You just have to know that you're hunkering down, and I know a lot of people don't like that, so that might be a little tough to get used to. All right, Magic Missile, previously an F. F's in the chat for Magic Missile. This is the one that I cannot get through a tier list without people having an issue with this one, and that's fine. I actually do not mind. If you have anything to say about these builds, let me know. Let me know in YouTube comments after you like the video. Let me know in Twitch chat after you type an F in chat. Then you can talk all about the Magic Missile as much as you want. So Magic Missile to me is a worse kunai electric whip. But those are S rank items. So like as an S, it has to be worse, right? This thing does not do status effects. Of course, if you find a starred one with poison on hit, you know, maybe that's pretty good. Being able to pierce rats is pretty good. But I think we've had Oven Knights where I couldn't destroy the shield. And I don't know if you all have seen that before, but the damage of the Magic Missile was so low, I couldn't actually break a shield. So there's two things that this does really well. It has flotation. That means that we can jump over an enemy, flotate as we Gallic gun downward, just like Vegeta does in the cartoon. And it also has tracking. So there's bats, there's birds, there's Shantae, there's bombers. It does hit that stuff. I know it does do a couple of things, but I don't know if I can have it any higher than a D. Like against certain bosses, sure, it flotates and actually hits the stuff, but why would I use Magic Missile over anything above a B? Ice Crossbow, as you know, doesn't hurt bosses at all. So yeah, you could use it over Ice Crossbow. But like, do I really get that big a benefit? Maybe you just put Magic Missile in the backpack and then swap it in once you get to a boss fight? I don't know. I'm willing to keep it as a D because I think it fits the same veil, support-wise, as the Lightning Rod. But I don't know if I really want to make a build out of it. If it has a star, sure. Without the star, think I'm all set. Right, next, Blowgun. Blowgun, previously a B tier. B for blow. Now, to be quite honest, when was the last time I used a blowgun? The idea behind it was you use it with stuff like phaser. And phaser blowgun does kill enemies. But in 4 BC, I feel like there's a decent amount of enemies that are really hard to hit. It's pretty much as simple as you roll behind it and then you shoot. but I don't think that's B tier worthy, especially when you think about bosses. Imagine fighting like Hand of the King with this thing when it only has, so Blowgun's base ammo 5. So you have to get one that has +3 ammo, and you have to get one that does, or you might have to use ammo mutation at the same time. I think it does kill things in biomes, but it's like really hard to actually get stuff without using phaser. And typically how I play Blowgun is I use networking with it. With networking, if I miss the crit, like the monster turns around, maybe I move on to the next monster. And the next monster I get the crit on, that damage is being dealt to the first monster. And eventually that monster is gonna die. It might even die to the basic attack when I turn around and shoot it. And I think that's good, but I don't know if that's any better than Boomerang, to be quite honest. It does have more builds behind it. For example, if you're using phaser, compared to Boomerang, which doesn't really have builds that really make the Boomerang feel good. But I think it's better than Bow and Endless Quiver, and I think it's better than Sonic Carbine. It's just once you get to a boss, then it's like not super great. All right, Barrel Launcher. I swear we've done this before. So Barrel Launcher actually got nerfed. It got nerfed before the tier list showed up. They made it purple only, which is fine because in all honesty, Brutality Barrel Launcher I thought was like an S rank item. You just walk through the biome and you shoot everything and they all die. Now it's not Brutality and now it's Tactics only. And the issue with Barrel Launcher while Tactics is if they reflect the barrel back at you, it's gonna do a lot of damage because you have no health. So what I typically do when I'm playing Tactics and I run Barrel Launcher, I use Masochist. And Masochist, which isn't on the screen here, reduces damage from traps, and unless it's been changed, the reflected barrel damage was trap damage. So a Tactics version of the Barrel Launcher, I would say it's probably not an S, only because there's a lot of danger when you use it. Almost similar to Javelin, where Javelin is really very powerful, gives you free biome clears. Barrel Launcher is kind of the same as that, except Barrel Launcher fights bosses, and Javelin does not. When you get the crit, it does a lot of damage, so you can fish for monsters. It's also AoE, just like Explosive, but it gives you the opportunity to run a shield. And typically I don't run Barrel with something like Hokuto or something like Alchemic Carbine, because I may as well just kill everything with those. I'd rather just run a shield. That way on, say, Timekeeper or the Giant, I have more ways to deal with the bullcrap from those monsters instead of just using the barrel. However, I don't think it's as good in Tactics as some of the stuff up here. It is really good. Like, don't get me wrong. And we may even say B for Barrel. Maybe B for Barrel is like really cool. When it comes to like free wins, like this kind of does Barrel Launcher's job better. So I hope you all do continue to use Barrel Launchers. Definitely go to Distillery to get your Barrel Launcher. But I think it is a pretty solid B. Maybe a high B at that point. Oh, I didn't do Ice Shards. Oh, crap. Previously, the triple S. The only triple S. Ice Shards did get nerfed. Just to let you all know, buffed/reworked Ice Shards. Aim is to give Ice Shards a strong identity as a secondary weapon. Remove the ammo count entirely. Increase the slow duration. Reduce the damage. So Ice Shards doesn't really deal a ton of damage anymore, but it still deals some damage. 87. Wait, that's like actually nothing. Are you kidding me? Okay, I stand corrected. It does very low damage. But in all honesty, I don't think it's that low. Like, because it doesn't have ammo to it, because you're critting and getting cooldown reduction with Instincto, it's dealing some kind of damage. And I think that's very viable. Can you make a build with, say, just Ice Shards and a shield? Probably not. Can you use Ice Shards with a regular melee weapon, dual bound? Absolutely. A matter of fact, Ice Shards often turns other melee weapons into monstrosities. We just play Tactics Ice Shards, dual bound with this thing, the brand new DLC item Snake Fangs. And chat thought that was giga busted when we saw. But you can do it with survival weapons. We've done Ice Shards with Flawless, Ice Shards with Broadsword, Ice Shards with the Shovel. And I think all of that's really good. Some people may say that it should probably drop down to a S because it can't kill monsters by itself. But in all honesty, like, having the actual triple S rank item is so cool. I don't really want to get rid of the triple S. I want to have something up there, and Ice Shards, like, we don't put this up here because there aren't some builds that use Hokutos at all. Like, you don't rock Hokuto with Marksman bow. But could you use Ice Shards with Marksman bow? I mean, probably not, because this is close range. But it could be like oily on-hit Marksman, and then you just spam Ice Shards when you're close. Probably works. You could probably do something else. It's a bad example. Like, don't take that as like the actual way to go. I think it's a triple S. So I do like that a lot. Please keep using Ice Shards before they nerf it. All right, last thing on the list, Lantern. Now, Lantern is a brand new DLC weapon. Lantern, when you think about the like custom mode breakdown, Lantern is actually coded as a melee weapon. It's a two-handed weapon, and the ranged piece to it is like really important, if not the most important part of the weapon. The regular melee attack is a basic melee strike that does a lot of damage. That's really all you need to do. What we really care about is the laser beam. For those who haven't unlocked this weapon, it is in the DLC. What it does is that as you kill monsters, well, you collect souls. What the souls do is the souls are ammo for your triangle button. And the triangle button will fire the exact amount of souls you have. And even goes farther, where you can have more souls based off of ammo mutation and plus ammo on the weapon itself. If you are in a biome just before the boss, you hold off on using your bullets. You want to get at least a full banana clip, and you take that into the boss fight. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a lot of souls, but it's not hard to get this many souls. You can actually do this with just ammo mutation. All right, so here's how you do it. You charge up, you can see the orb spinning around me. We're about to summon the Spirit Bomb right now. Zenyatta. I couldn't think of an actual character that has something like this, but yes, gold rank damage dealers as healers know all about this. And then you unleash the triangle button. When you unleash the triangle button, bosses hate it. And I'm actually not sure if it matters what boss it is. I feel like you could do this to every single boss. And this is maybe 6 or 7 souls. Half a Hand of King's health. Problem is bosses have phase changes where they go invisible. Yes, but imagine it from a standpoint of like you have an item in the game or a rune or a relic where the monster spawns with half HP. I didn't even use the full clip. Once I loaded up the rest of it, instant phase change. And then you have this section, which unfortunately my turret is ruining my setup. But Lantern basically turned this boss fight into a one-phase boss fight. That's gonna get nerfed? Shh. They don't have to know that. So like I said, this requires one thing, and that is a way to stop the boss from doing anything. And there's multiple ways to do that. You could either run ice, Wings of the Crow, even if you have a red, where is it? A red lantern is probably good enough to take just to kill Hand of the King and Scarecrow instantly. So I actually think while that gameplay still exists, I think Lancer's an S rank item. Now, I'm not saying that as like a hashtag ad trying to get you all to buy the DLC. Absolutely not. I think based off of the boss kill, based off of the elite deletion, you see an elite, hold triangle for just like 4 bullets or so. You don't have to do the full clip. Release, elite's gone. So I think it's actually a very, very strong weapon. Could it be nerfed on bosses? I don't know. I actually don't know how they would nerf that because each bullet does its own damage. I think the only way they could nerf it is if you can only do an X amount of bullet charges at once. Yo, that's it. That's the tier list. If you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments what you think about this tier list. If it looks giga wrong, tell me that. Tell me what you would put on some of these. If it looks giga right, let me know which is your like ideal build for some of this like S rank stuff in here.